Nelson Mandela is considered one of the great heroes of history. And the reason he is considered one of the great heroes of history is because for the sake of his people, for the sake of getting rid of segregation between white and non-white South Africans, for the sake of getting rid of oppression in the country of South Africa, Nelson Mandela went to prison on an island called Robben Island. Robben Island is an island off the coast of South Africa where political prisoners for many years, for centuries, had been sent to in isolation from the country of South Africa. And things there were not very, obviously being a prison, things weren't very good over there. Bad weather, the food that they were given wasn't very pleasant. They were often put on starvation diets. They were forced to work in mine quarries or in lime quarries with this reflection onto their eyes. In fact, Nelson Mandela, having worked or having been in prison at Robben Island for the rest of his life, had issues with his eyes because he worked in that lime quarry. But Nelson Mandela had served 18 years of his 27 years of imprisonment. He spent that at Robben Island, and he lived a rough life there. But now, after having freed or relieved the country of the segregation, having ended the apartheid era, and having removed the oppression being faced in the country, this place, Robben Island, has now become a tourist destination, and so people are able to go there and to see, how things were like for the prisoners back there. And so a place that had previously been a prison, a place that had previously been this quarantined off area of the country, has now become this glorified tourist destination. And in the same way, Earth will become that glorified tourist destination eventually when God completes this plan of salvation. I once saw a video called The Pale Blue Dot, and this was Carl Sagan speaking about the mission, I think it was the Voyager mission, of how they sent this spacecraft out from Earth, and they just sent it flying off into the far edges of the universe, just letting it completely go. And he said that it's in this video, The Pale Blue Dot, and explains how he had them just before I think the spacecraft had been quite a ways out of the Earth's atmosphere, and I think going through some of the more distant going past some of the more distant planets. I think it was just after Saturn. He decided to have them let Voyager take one last glance homeward, to take one picture of Earth. And what resulted from that was this picture now of Earth, and it was just this what he describes as a mosaic of square pixels laid one on top of each other, and a background with more distant stars and planets. But then there was Earth, this little pixel, just this little dot. He called it the pale blue dot. And he explained how insignificant Earth was in relation to the rest of the Earth, the rest of the universe, the rest of all the other galaxies. He explained how, he just showed how this picture demonstrates how Earth is just so insignificant. He called it the pale blue dot. And I'd like to say that, yes, Earth might be insignificant now. Earth might be a nothing compared to what we see in the rest of the universe. But as a result of this plan of salvation, as a result of God coming to this earth, becoming a man like us, living here, dying here, being raised from the dead, and eventually, the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven and being here on earth. Eventually, because of that, Earth will have a more glorified position in the universe than ever before, or than any other place in the entire universe. And truly, it says, as John says in Revelation 21 verse 3, it says, "Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them, and be their God."